Night falls quietly, but your mind doesn't. You're sitting there again, staring at your phone, replaying the same scene you swore you'd stop thinking about. Someone didn't text back. Someone pulled away. Someone stopped seeing in you what you were so desperate to show. And beneath all the noise of rational thought, they're just busy, maybe they're tired, maybe it's nothing, there's a deeper ache whispering, what if it's because I'm not enough? You tell yourself you've heard this before. You know it's irrational. But knowing doesn't stop the feeling. Because the feeling isn't built on logic, it's built on years of trying to earn love like it's a prize you have to qualify for. You don't even remember when it began. The subtle shift from wanting to be loved to proving that you deserve it. It starts small. A compliment that makes you feel alive. A good grade, a promotion, a moment of attention that lights something inside you. You think it's confidence, but it's not. It's relief, the kind that fades the second you're no longer being seen. And then, without realizing it, you start chasing that relief again and again, like a fix. Every success becomes a hit. Every bit of validation, a drug. And slowly, without ever deciding to, you become addicted. People call it ambition or discipline or confidence, but deep down, you know it's something else. You're not chasing growth. You're chasing proof. Proof that you are worthy, that you are lovable, that you are something more than the quiet fear whispering that you are not enough. And the world rewards it. It praises you for your effort, your drive, your hunger. It calls you impressive, not realizing that everything you do is secretly a plea. Please, just see me. But the more you chase, the emptier it gets. Because every time you achieve, every time you impress, it never lasts. The applause fades. The silence returns. And in that silence, the withdrawal begins. You start to panic, wondering what else you can do, what more you can become, what higher mountain you can climb to feel that brief, blinding sense of being enough again. You tell yourself you just need to work harder, become better, fix yourself, because maybe if you fix everything that's wrong, someone will finally stay. But you don't realize the truth. You're not chasing love, you're chasing the performance of being lovable. You've built an entire identity around proving something that never needed to be proven. Love, real love, doesn't require evidence. It doesn't need you to be perfect, or strong, or interesting. But somewhere along the way, you learned that love was conditional. Maybe from parents who praised achievement more than presence. Maybe from friends who valued you when you were useful. Maybe from a world that told you you had to shine to be seen. Whatever it was, it taught you a quiet rule. Only when you are impressive will you be safe. And that's the illusion. The illusion that your worth is a performance, that love is something you have to audition for. You've mistaken exhaustion for effort, anxiety for care, and constant striving for purpose. You've confused being loved with being needed. But love isn't earned. It's received. And the more you perform, the further you drift from the part of you that is already worthy, the still, quiet self beneath all the proving. Somewhere inside, you remember what that felt like. The time before you learned to measure yourself by the reactions of others. The time when you could simply exist, laugh, rest, and not feel guilty for it. But now, that part of you feels like a stranger. You've been living so long as the version of you who must constantly justify their right to exist, that you've forgotten the version who simply is. So you keep scrolling. You keep comparing. You keep pretending you don't care, while secretly hoping someone notices how much you do. But beneath it all, what you really want isn't attention, it's relief. Relief from the unbearable tension of having to prove that you matter. You think you're unlovable. You think people keep leaving because something's wrong with you. But maybe that's not the truth. Maybe you've just been trapped in a cycle, not of being unloved, but of trying too hard to be lovable. You never wanted to be the best, did you? You just wanted to be seen, and still be enough when you stopped performing. That's where the real story begins, not with chasing love, but with understanding the addiction that keeps you from feeling it. It always starts with the same story, the child who learns that being loved is something they have to earn. Maybe it begins with a look of approval from a parent when you bring home a good grade. Maybe it's the way everyone claps when you win, but no one notices when you rest. Little by little, the message is absorbed into your nervous system. Love follows performance. You start to equate your value with usefulness, your belonging with success. And so you grow up chasing the same feeling, not realizing that what you're actually seeking is the safety you once felt in that approving gaze. Psychologists call this conditional regard, the belief that only certain versions of you deserve to be loved. It's how the addiction begins. Every "I'm proud of you" becomes a subtle instruction. Do this again. Stay this way. Don't fail. Your identity fuses with your achievements, and soon you're not living, you're performing. Every conversation becomes a quiet audition. Every silence feels like rejection. Carl Jung wrote that the persona, the mask we wear for the world, is necessary to interact with society, but dangerous when mistaken for the self. When you believe the mask is who you are, you become trapped inside it. You polish it, perfect it, wear it until it fits too tightly to remove. You begin to fear that without it, you'll disappear. And this fear keeps you addicted, not to love itself, but to the appearance of being lovable. It's a strange kind of prison, one where the bars are made of praise. Because it feels good when people notice you. It feels good to be admired, to be desired, to be told that you're special. But every compliment only deepens the dependency. The moment the attention fades, withdrawal sets in. The silence between achievements feels unbearable. And you start asking yourself, who am I when no one is watching? This addiction doesn't just shape your behavior, it shapes your perception of love itself. You begin to seek partners, friends, even jobs that reflect the same pattern. The need to prove, to earn, to justify your place. You might find yourself drawn to emotionally unavailable people because they give you something to chase. Their indifference becomes the needle, and every small moment of affection, the high. When they pull away, you don't leave. You try harder. Because deep down, it's not about them, it's about reenacting the old pattern. Maybe this time, if I prove enough, they'll stay. But they rarely do. Because proving is not connection. It's performance. It's control disguised as love. Nietzsche spoke of the will to power, the human drive to overcome, to assert, to create meaning through action. But when this will turns inward, when it becomes the compulsion to prove one's worth, it mutates into suffering. The power that could have been used to create life is spent maintaining a fragile identity. You become the actor who forgets the play is over. Alan Watts once said that life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Yet, in the addiction to proving, we treat existence like an exam. Every moment a question, every action an answer, every mistake a mark against our worth. The irony is that the harder we try to become lovable, the further we drift from the authenticity that love actually responds to. Because love, in its purest form, is drawn to truth, not to masks. If Jung saw the mask as the trap, Viktor Frankl saw meaning as the key. Frankl wrote that human beings can endure almost any suffering if they believe it serves a purpose. But in the addiction to proving, the purpose is distorted. You suffer not to grow, but to be seen. You endure pain not for meaning but for validation. The suffering becomes cyclical, feeding itself. Every time you prove yourself, you reinforce the idea that you must. And then comes the paradox. The quieter your inner world becomes, the louder the craving for external noise. Silence feels like death because it strips you of the performance. You look at your reflection and see no audience, no applause, no reason. The mind whispers, do something. Be something. Show them you matter. And you obey, not because you want to, but because you can't bear the thought of being invisible. But invisibility isn't death. It's freedom. It's the space where your real self, the one buried beneath all the proving, starts to breathe again. Yet to reach that point, you must first understand the depth of the addiction. You're not addicted to love itself. You're addicted to conditional love, to the version that keeps you performing, striving, needing to be enough. You've mistaken tension for connection. You've confused anxiety for care. You've believed that the high of being chosen is the same as being loved. It's not. The addict doesn't crave love. They crave relief, relief from the unbearable silence that appears when the world isn't applauding. The irony is that this addiction hides the very thing it's trying to find. Because love cannot exist in a space where you are constantly trying to earn it. When you are performing, you are absent. You're no longer there, just a version of you, carefully constructed to be safe. And real love requires presence. It requires you. So the question isn't, why doesn't anyone love me? The real question is, what would happen if I stopped proving? Would the world collapse? Would everyone leave? Or would you finally see who stays when you stop performing? That's the edge of transformation, the moment when the addiction begins to lose its power. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you realize that your worth was never meant to be negotiated, the whole game starts to feel absurd. And in that absurdity lies freedom. But first, you have to face the withdrawal. You have to sit in the silence you've spent your whole life trying to outrun. Only then will you begin to discover the self that never needed to be proven at all. At first, it feels unbearable. The stillness, the absence of the chase, the quiet that follows when you finally stop performing. You think you're ready for peace, but peace doesn't come immediately. What comes first is panic. The same way a body shakes when it's detoxing, the mind trembles when it's no longer fed by validation. You check your phone. You wonder if someone noticed your absence. You tell yourself you're fine, but a voice inside whispers, "Prove it." You're in withdrawal, not from love, but from attention. From the constant reassurance that you exist because someone else confirms it. Without that, the old fear returns. The one that says, maybe I'm nothing without the applause. You've been so used to performing, so accustomed to earning love through effort, that you've forgotten what it means to simply exist without earning your place. And that's what this stage feels like, empty, disorienting, almost like grief. Because, in a way, it is grief, the death of the person you've pretended to be. You're losing your identity as the achiever, the good one, the one who always tries. You're burying the persona that earned love through exhaustion. And even though that mask suffocated you, it also protected you. It gave you a sense of control. Without it, you feel naked. But that nakedness, that vulnerability, is the beginning of healing. Because for the first time, you're not hiding behind effort. You're facing the truth of yourself without the armor of performance. The mind resists it, of course. It wants to run back to the chase, back to the rush of being noticed. But something quieter inside you begins to whisper, maybe I don't have to earn my own worth. In that whisper lies the turning point. Carl Jung spoke about integration, the process of reclaiming the parts of yourself you've rejected, the ones you deemed too soft, too lazy, too unlovable. During this withdrawal, those parts begin to rise. The moments you were humiliated, the times you felt invisible, the emotions you buried under achievements. They come back now, not to punish you, but to be seen. You can't love yourself by ignoring these parts. You love them by sitting with them, even when they're ugly, even when they scare you. This is the uncomfortable work of becoming whole. It's not glamorous. It doesn't look like a motivational montage. It looks like silence, tears, confusion. It feels like nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, everything is. Because you're teaching your nervous system a new language, I don't have to earn safety. Slowly, the craving for proof weakens. You start to notice moments where you don't feel the need to perform. You speak and don't overanalyze every word. You rest and don't punish yourself for it. You exist without explanation, and, strangely, the world doesn't end. The people who truly care for you don't vanish. The world keeps spinning. And in that realization, a small, fragile peace begins to bloom. This is the essence of recovery, not filling the silence with noise, but learning to hear yourself within it. When you stop chasing, the chaos quiets, and something profound appears, presence. The simple awareness that you are here, breathing, alive, and that this, in itself, is enough. Philosophically, this is the point where all great thinkers converge. Nietzsche would call it becoming who you are, the courage to exist without the need for justification. Frankl would call it freedom of meaning, the discovery that life's worth is not dependent on what others see, but on how you choose to live. Buddhist thought would call it detachment, not in coldness, but in liberation from the constant grip of desire. And in practice, it looks simple. You stop trying to fix every emotion. You allow sadness without making it proof of failure. You allow joy without trying to post it. You allow silence without assuming it's a problem to solve. You begin to experience life not as a performance, but as participation, a quiet return to being. But the ego doesn't vanish easily. It still whispers, "You're falling behind. You're wasting time. You should be doing more." That's the final trick of addiction. It disguises itself as responsibility. It tells you that stillness is laziness, that rest is regression. Yet, if you listen carefully, you'll realize that this voice isn't truth, it's fear. The fear of losing an identity built on proving. So you breathe through it. You let the discomfort stay without obeying it. You remind yourself that healing isn't about becoming more, it's about becoming real. There's a moment, quiet but powerful, when you realize that the love you've been chasing can't be given by anyone else. Because what you wanted all along wasn't love itself, but permission. Permission to stop performing. Permission to be enough as you are. And when that realization lands, it's like something inside you exhales for the first time in years. You don't have to earn your place in this world. You don't have to be extraordinary to deserve peace. You don't need to prove that you're lovable, because the very act of existing, of being human, of breathing through the pain, is already proof of your worth. The healing doesn't come as a dramatic breakthrough. It comes as small, quiet moments that feel almost ordinary. The morning you wake up and don't rush to check your phone. The afternoon you rest without guilt. The night you look at your reflection and don't feel the urge to fix it. These moments don't feel like victory, but they are. They're freedom, disguised as simplicity. You begin to see that what you thought was love was often approval, and what you thought was strength was actually fear. The more you stop proving, the more space you create for something real to enter. Love that doesn't demand performance, peace that doesn't require exhaustion, and belonging that doesn't ask for explanation. Then one day, in the middle of a quiet moment, you realize you were never unlovable. You were just never taught that love could exist without performance. And in that truth, the addiction loses its hold. The need to prove begins to dissolve, not because you've convinced yourself of your worth, but because you've finally felt it, beneath all the noise, beneath all the striving. There's no applause when this happens. No grand moment of recognition. Just a deep, quiet stillness, and the soft, undeniable feeling that you have come home to yourself. Life feels different now, quieter, softer, but fuller somehow. You wake up, and for a brief moment, your mind reaches for the old rhythm. The checklist, the urgency, the subtle hum of anxiety that used to drive you. But it's not there. Or maybe it's still there, but it doesn't control you anymore. You're not sprinting toward approval, you're moving through your day with something that almost feels like ease. This is what it means to return home, not to a place, but to yourself. After years of chasing validation, you begin to live differently. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but subtly, in small, almost invisible ways. You say no to things that drain you. You stop apologizing for needing rest. You stop explaining yourself to people who never really tried to understand. You start choosing silence over noise, stillness over proving. And it feels strange, at first, to not have to perform. To just be. There's a quiet joy that begins to fill your days, not the kind that comes from excitement or achievement, but the kind that grows from contentment. You start to understand that peace was never supposed to be thrilling. It was supposed to be grounding. You notice things you used to rush past, the way sunlight falls through your window, the sound of your breath when you stop long enough to hear it, the small warmth that comes from knowing you're not pretending anymore. This is integration, the point where healing turns into living. The insight you gained doesn't stay trapped in your mind as philosophy. It starts shaping how you move through the world. You don't chase conversations that make you shrink. You no longer beg people to stay. You stop proving that you're worthy of their time because, somewhere deep inside, you've realized you were always enough, even when no one was watching. Alan Watts once said that life is like music. Its purpose isn't to reach the end, but to dance while it's playing. For the first time, you start to understand what that means. You're no longer sprinting through life to arrive somewhere worthy. You're moving through it, participating in it, letting it unfold. And with that surrender comes freedom. Not the freedom to escape life, but the freedom to live it without the heavy expectation of being impressive. You begin to notice that your relationships change too. The people who loved your performance fade quietly, unable to recognize you now that you've stopped dancing for them. But new people arrive, or perhaps old ones who finally see the real you. There's less tension in your presence, less hunger in your eyes. You don't need to be admired anymore, you just want to be understood. And those who meet you there, they become mirrors, not audiences. Viktor Frankl wrote that love is the act of seeing someone as they truly are, not as they appear, not as they perform. You start to understand that kind of love, both in giving and receiving it. When you meet others now, you look beyond their performances too. You see their own masks, their own fears, the quiet desperation to prove themselves. And instead of judging them, you feel compassion. Because you know what it's like to live that way, to spend years running from silence. There's a humility that comes with this kind of peace. You stop trying to fix people. You stop needing to fix yourself. You begin to see that most of what we call growth is just remembering what we already knew before fear made us forget. You realize that you don't have to be extraordinary to be worthy, that being ordinary, being human, being real, is sacred enough. The world around you doesn't necessarily change. It still rewards performance, still praises the loud, the productive, the impressive. But you're no longer enslaved by it. You participate in it, but you're not consumed by it. You work, but you don't worship work. You love, but you don't lose yourself in love. You rest, and you don't call it weakness. You finally understand that balance isn't found by managing everything perfectly, but by letting go of the need to manage who you are. Sometimes you'll still slip. You'll feel the old craving return, that urge to prove, to be noticed, to be validated. That's okay. Healing doesn't mean the addiction disappears forever. It means you know how to recognize it when it returns, and instead of obeying it, you smile at it, gently. You let it pass through you like a memory. You know now that you are not your impulses. You are the awareness that sees them and chooses differently. And when those moments of doubt come, when someone ignores you, when you fail, when you feel invisible, you no longer spiral into panic. You sit with it. You breathe. You whisper to yourself the truth you once forgot. My worth is not up for negotiation. From that space, you begin to live with grace. Not the kind that looks spiritual or enlightened, but the kind that moves quietly through your everyday life. The kind that lets you enjoy small things again. Laughing without self-consciousness, resting without guilt, caring without fear of being too much. You realize that love was never supposed to be a transaction. It was always meant to be an exchange of presence. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be whole. And wholeness isn't about having everything figured out. It's about accepting every part of you, even the ones that still tremble. You don't need to be admired anymore. You don't even need to be understood. You just need to be. You start to see that the moments you once feared, the quiet ones, the lonely ones, are no longer empty. They're full of life. You look at the world around you and realize that nothing's missing. You were always looking for love, but love was never somewhere else. It was always in the space you were too busy filling with noise. And so you breathe. Deeply. Slowly. Without urgency. You stop trying to prove, and you simply exist. And in that stillness, you realize something profound. The kind of truth that doesn't shout but settles deep into your bones. You were never unlovable. You were simply tired from trying to prove that you were. When you stop proving, love doesn't vanish, it appears. Not as applause. Not as approval. But as presence. It's in the quiet mornings when you wake without anxiety. It's in the simple joy of doing something for yourself, not for recognition. It's in the soft gaze of someone who sees you, not your performance. That's the freedom you were searching for all along. Not the freedom to be loved, but the freedom to be yourself without needing to earn it. And when you finally find that peace, when you stop trying to prove your worth, you don't become less. You become real. And in being real, you become something far more powerful than lovable. You become whole.